The National Academy of Public Administration has published what it calls a field guide for using federal grants. Not just any grants, though. It's about government-to-government grants to state, local, and tribal governments so they can build better data systems. The idea is better data management and analysis can lead to better programs. We get more now from the field guide's principal authors. Joining me is Pari Sabity, a grants advisor at U.S. Digital Response. Ms. Sabity, good to have you with us.
Thanks so much, Tom. Glad to be here.
And Kathy Stack, a senior policy fellow at the Yale Tobin Center for Economic Policy. Ms. Stack, good to have you with us.
Great. Thanks for inviting us.
And by the way, is field guide the new word for playbook?
Perry is a bird watcher, so we have a field guide.
All right. That's a good answer. And what are we talking about here? Why this field guide for such a highly specific topic at this time?
So let me give you a little background. In 2024, the Office of Management and Budget updated its uniform guidance that provides grant procedures and rules governing all federal grants. So that's over $1 trillion going out in hundreds of programs. And they made a very important clarification. And we know it's important because we've been talking to folks in the state and local government who have been confused about how permissible it is to use federal grant dollars for data and evaluation activities or shared data infrastructure. So the provision basically explicitly says federal grant funds may be used by grantees for data evaluation and integrated data systems as either direct or indirect costs. And that, for some programs, has been the policy that they've always assumed, but there's other federal programs where the field has perceived a barrier that because the program office in the federal agency wasn't explicitly saying you can use our dollars in this way, it was assumed on the outside that you couldn't. So what this enables is a much more robust investment strategy where state and local governments that are trying to connect data across a lot of different programs and really harness the insights that you can get by bringing that data together now have permission to tap into these different funding sources and combine them and sustain them on an ongoing basis.
And there have been several federal statutes for federal agencies to use data and evaluation more explicitly in policymaking and program planning, the Data Act and so on. Is this a way of ensuring that money that flows for various purposes from the government to state-administered or even tribally administered programs has the same basis for program evaluation as, in theory, is available to the federal agencies?
Absolutely. A lot of the work on implementing the Evidence Act has been at the federal level, trying to get different chief data officers and agencies to get their data to flow. But what's an interesting contrast is at the federal level, those agencies have to go to Congress and get appropriations for that. What OMB is doing with this guidance is saying, hey, the dollars that are flowing to state and local governments, you may use these. Those dollars are already in the system, and their OMB has given permission coordinated with the federal agencies to say the dollars that are already there, you can tap into them to build these the new sort of modern infrastructure that's needed.
And Pari, give us an example of how that might work at the state level. You were a budget director for Ohio, correct? And so you understand what's going on at the state level.
Absolutely. So we do have some great examples in states. I'm going to tell you a story about North Dakota. They realized during the pandemic to satisfy the reporting requirements for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, they would need to have outcomes data from a variety of human service programs that existed under their very broad reach. And they began to build that system to give them automated outcome data from early care and education all the way back to family stability to allow them to collect that data. But they were doing it by taking the cost of that program and running and allocating them to a large variety of programs, 4 or 5 different programs, one step at a time. This is a really expensive way to do this, and it's incredibly complicated. And with technology changes, we really ought to be thinking about how to do this in a new way. So the clarifications that OMB has made, Kathy has pointed out, really helped how they might build such a system. Any state or local government might build such a system to allow them to use outcomes data from many different domains to prove their programs are actually working. So that's why this is a very exciting time to make these changes something that everyone can understand and give people in lay language.
We're speaking with Pari Sabity. She's a grants advisor at U.S. Digital Response, and with Kathy Stack, senior fellow at the Yale Tobin Center for Economic Policy. They are both fellows of the National Academy of Public Administration. And is there a formula, that is to say, if a grant is, say, $100 million, just to make up a number, how much of that under the guidance is available for building a data system? And if data systems in the follow-on is integrated, can multiple state agencies, for example, put their grant money together so they build one instead of replicating, multiple data systems?
So the answer is the OMB guidance does not specify an amount. There isn't a cap, and it is going to depend upon their ability to show a benefit to the program. I'm going to throw this to Pari to talk about how, and this is really the guts of our guide on the mechanics of how you can tap into programs and justify the blending of money or the braiding of funding.
Right. So there are many different ways to allocate these costs across multiple programs. The easiest way to do this is to have a system that will benefit all agencies in a government. And if it benefits the enterprise, then the federal government allows you to incorporate it as part of your government-wide cost allocation plan. And it becomes it's like just a couple of cents on top of that entire allocation amount, which covers lots of other things that are important for a functioning government that can run these programs. Well, it joins HR and telephone service and all sorts of other rental, utilities, lights, Zoom, all sorts of things. So it's just like that. So data becomes part of the lifeblood of running and administering federal grants responsibly. That's if you show that your data system benefits all elements of a local government administering that program. If it has benefits to a specific group of programs, then you would do exactly what you described, which is that you charge a certain amount to each program based on the benefits received, and that would pay for a program that would benefit just a few programs.
Because at the state level, you might have economic development grants, you might have unemployment grants, housing, homelessness. A lot of programs seem to interlock, say, in the economic area, and it would sound like it makes sense for somehow the data thrown off by those programs to be used in some integrated way, especially with all the AI tools coming in.
Absolutely. In fact, if your mission is to improve a goal like economic mobility or getting people put into better education systems that give them better outcomes, of course you're going to need to use multiple different sources of data to understand whether those programs are actually proving to work the way you want them to work.
And Kathy, is this money available from grants that are so-called block grants or the less discretionary grants?